November 5, 1968. Against all odds, Richard Nixon completes what many historians call the greatest political comeback in American history. After years in the political wilderness, humiliated, written off, declared dead in the world of politics, Nixon claws his way back and wins the presidency of the United States. But how did a man once mocked as bitter and finished rise to become the most powerful man on earth? And how did the very qualities that fueled his rise become the seeds of his tragic downfall? This is the story of Richard Nixon, his resilience, his paranoia, his hunger for legacy, and the scandal that destroyed him. Richard Nixon's life was forged in hardship. Born in a modest California household, he dreamed of the Ivy League, the ticket to power in America. But his family was poor. He had nothing except determination. They called him Iron Butt. Why? Because he could sit for endless hours, studying, working harder than anyone else. That work ethic got him to Duke University on scholarship and later into the halls of American politics. By the 1950s, Nixon was climbing fast. He became a U.S. Senator, then Dwight Eisenhower's running mate. But even as vice president, Nixon was hounded by scandal. Accused of misusing political funds, his career nearly ended, until he went on live television and gave the speech of his life, the famous Checkers speech. Millions of Americans were moved. They demanded Eisenhower keep him. Nixon had survived yet again, but his luck ran out in 1960. He lost the presidency to John F. Kennedy, an election so razor-thin, many believe Democratic machine politics in Chicago stole it from him. 2 years later, he tried to redeem himself in California, running for governor. He lost badly, and then came the bitter moment that seemed like the end. Facing the press, Nixon lashed out. "You won't have Nixon to kick around anymore, because this is my last press conference." The press mocked him. ABC even ran a half-hour special, The Political Obituary of Richard Nixon. Time magazine concluded, barring a miracle, Nixon will never hold political office again. By all accounts, his career was finished. But Richard Nixon was no ordinary man. For 6 years, Nixon disappeared from the spotlight. But behind the scenes, he was plotting, learning, waiting. By 1968, America was in turmoil. The Vietnam War raged on. Cities burned with riots. Crime was rising. The people were desperate for law, order, and stability. Nixon reemerged, not as the bitter, stiff man of old, but as the new Nixon, smiling, relaxed, even making corny jokes and bowling in public. It was an image makeover, and it worked. That year, he ran one of the smoothest campaigns in history. And when the dust settled, he had done the impossible. Richard Nixon, the man America had buried, rose again as the 37th President of the United States. But this was not enough for Nixon. He didn't just want to be president. He wanted to be remembered as one of the greatest presidents of all time. In his first years, Nixon was active. He created environmental protections, supported worker rights, and sought peace abroad. Most famously, he opened relations with China and signed historic agreements with the Soviet Union. But beneath the surface, another Nixon was brewing. A darker Nixon. Late at night, with a drink in hand, he would brood over old enemies. He obsessed over the press, the elites of Harvard and Georgetown, the Kennedys, people who mocked him, excluded him, ridiculed him. He carried these wounds like fresh scars. His mind turned to revenge. He told his staff, "One day, we'll get them where we want them, and then we'll step on them hard and twist." Nixon believed enemies lurked everywhere. Journalists, bureaucrats, Democrats, plotting against him. He demanded loyalty from his staff, but secretly installed a taping system in the White House. Every conversation, every meeting, recorded. He believed the tapes would one day prove his greatness. Instead, they would become his undoing. By 1972, Nixon was riding high. His opponent, George McGovern, was weak. Nixon wanted not just victory, but a landslide. And so he pushed his aides to dig up dirt on the Democrats. Then, June 17, 1972, a break-in at the Watergate Hotel. Burglars tied to Nixon's campaign were caught planting bugs in Democratic headquarters. At first, it seemed minor. A sloppy job, barely noticed by the public. Nixon crushed McGovern in the election, winning every state but Massachusetts and D.C., one of the biggest landslides in American history. But Watergate didn't die. It grew. Soon investigators uncovered ties to Nixon's staff. Demands for hush money followed. And then came the revelation of Nixon's tapes. The recordings exposed a paranoid, vengeful president, swearing, scheming, ordering cover-ups. The smoking gun was a tape from June 23, 1972, proving Nixon tried to use the CIA to block the FBI investigation. The very system Nixon had installed to secure his legacy sealed his fate. The scandal consumed his presidency. His closest aides resigned. Allies abandoned him. The Supreme Court forced him to hand over the tapes. The public, horrified by his own words, turned against him. Richard Nixon, the man who had risen from nothing, who had come back from every defeat, was cornered. On August 8, 1974, Nixon went on national television. His voice trembling, he announced he would resign the presidency, the first and only U.S. president ever to do so. The next day, he addressed his staff one last time. Fighting back tears, he left them with these haunting words: "Never get discouraged, never be petty. Always remember, others may hate you, but those who hate you don't win unless you hate them, and then you destroy yourself." Moments later, Nixon walked out of the White House, boarded a helicopter, and disappeared into exile. Richard Nixon's story is one of the most dramatic in American history. A man of relentless willpower who refused to stay down, yet undone by the very flaws that had fueled his rise. He achieved greatness, yes, but his paranoia, his bitterness, his hunger for control destroyed him. In the end, Richard Nixon left us a warning. Victory means nothing if you cannot master yourself. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep dives into the lives of history's most fascinating figures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.